Hello, this is Tony Miller, Tony Miller Sunday School Lessons, and this is our 12th lesson, I think, that I've prepared in the last 8 or 9 days. That we're all with this whole theme of social distancing. And I began about 8 or 9 days ago with 3 lessons were trivia lecture questions. As we all are being on lockdown and looking for things to do, I thought it would be something good to do to just study the Bible on your own and test your own intellect. So we did a New Testament and an Old Testament trivia, and then I did a an end times trivia lesson. And then I prepared a lesson which was a brief lesson of the lesson that we did last Sunday. And the next that we did here was we began with Palm Sunday, which would be last Sunday. And for the next, I prepared 8 more lessons, just giving the events as they transpired day by day as Jesus went to the cross at Calvary. My hope was that we would all find some value in the Word of God as we have all this extra time on our hands. Next. Our lesson is entitled this Social Distancing Biblical Review of the Resurrection Sunday. I did each day, as I said, with the exception of Wednesday, but the lesson on Friday was quite long, so I broke it up in 2. This lesson comes almost exclusively out of chapter 28, and this is the events that transpired on Sunday, Easter, Resurrection Day. So how did we get here? So Jesus died on the cross. That's where we were last Friday. Amen. And also on Friday evening, as Friday approached, a rich man named Joseph Arimathea, that he wanted the body of Jesus, and he requested it from Pilate, and Pilate gave him the body of Jesus, and they took the body down from the cross. And I share with you that it was Friday, but Sunday is still coming, and that's what not to fret. But even if that Jesus has died, he's prophesied many times that that was not the end. Let's move on. And then Joseph bought about 75 pounds of perfume and ointments that made from myrrh and aloes, following the Jewish burial customs, and they wrapped Jesus' body in spices along with long sheets and cloth. And this was Passover was approaching, so they didn't have a lot of time, so they still needed to finish after the Sabbath. Next one. So it's in Friday night, and after Passover supper, and about midnight, a group of Jewish leaders gathered at the home of Caiaphas, who was the high priest, where they discussed the fears concerning the master, and Jesus' assertion that he would rise from the dead on the 3rd day. And this meeting ended with an appointment of a committee of Sanhedrin, who are the most like our Supreme Court, who were to visit who Pilate early the next day, which would be Saturday, and bearing a fish request from the Sanhedrin that the Roman guard be stationed before Jesus' tomb to prevent the friends from tampering with his body. At least that was what they were going to submit to Pilate. Amen. And on Saturday, again, Pilate heard this request from the Sanhedrin. Again, that's the Supreme Court. And he says, I will give you a guard of 10 soldiers. They wanted 1, and he gave them 10. So go and make your tomb secure. And when they went back to the temple, they got 10 of their own Jewish guards and 10 Roman soldiers. And even on the Sabbath, this was on the Sabbath, and they complained about Jesus doing many things on the Sabbath, but here they set these watchmen before the tomb. They're worried about Jesus getting out. And these men rolled another stone in front of the stone that was already there, and sealed it with Pilate's seal around the stones, lest it be disturbed when they're without their knowledge. So now you got 20 guards around Jesus' tomb, and an extra stone rolled in front of the tomb. And then they wanted to make sure these guys did not leave. They brought them food and water to make sure that Jesus could not get out of the tomb. So again, it's Saturday. It's Saturday and Jesus remains in this tomb. As I said, I'm chronicling the days. So Friday, Jesus was crucified, and Saturday he was in the tomb, and then Sunday would be the third day that he had been in the grave. Next slide. And now we go to Matthew 28, verse 1. And early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene, who's Jesus' mother, and the other Mary, which is Lazarus' sister, went out to visit the tomb where Jesus was laying. Next. And early, also on Sunday morning, the women were before going to the tomb. They took spices that they had prepared, which was a custom, and Jesus didn't. The Jews did not embalm, so they used these embalming spices to minimize the odors of the decaying body. That was what their purpose was, and they were taking those along with what Joseph of Arimathea had already prepared to do this, to pay respects to Jesus' body and give him this proper burial. Next. And as they approached his tomb, suddenly there was a great earthquake. And an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and rolled the stone away and sat on it. This obviously is a miraculous event. Next slide. In verse 3 of chapter 28, and his face, the face of this angel shone like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow, and the guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. Again, these are the events that are happening on Sunday morning. Next. Verse 5, and the angel spoke to the women, that'll be Mary and Martha, and other women that were with them. And he says, don't be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified back on Friday. But he isn't here. He has arisen from the dead, just as he said it would happen. Come and see where his body was laying. Again, the angel that came down from heaven, that looked like lightning, sat on the stone and saw the women, and ultimately walked with them into the tomb to see where Jesus was laid. Next. The angel spoke, don't be afraid. He is risen from the dead, just as he said it would happen. That was prophecy verified. Amen. Verse 70. Now I'll go quickly. The angel speaking to these women. And tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, that they've seen evidence, eyewitness evidence, that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. And you will see him there. Remember what I have told you. And here's the thing. In Matthew 26, Jesus said to them, all of you have made stumbles because of me, for it is risen, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will scatter. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. And Jesus told them that he was going to go to Galilee after he was stricken, and after he had been raised. They have to remember his words. Amen. Next. And I share with you this map here just to give you some perspective that Bethany and Jerusalem, they're about 2 or 2.5 miles apart, and in between them is the Mount of Olives, and then north of there is where Galilee. Galilee is a city. There's a Sea of Galilee, or the Sea of Tiberias, and there's a city of Galilee within the city of the region of Galilee, just to give you perspective. And so Peter And John apparently stayed in Jerusalem on the night of the betrayal, whereas the others fled. We don't know where they, after all, Jesus was arrested and clearly frightening, and they could be next. We know that the gospel accounts that Jesus and his disciples frequently stayed outside of Jerusalem in Mary and Martha's and Lazarus' house in Bethany. And that's what I shared with you, that each of those days along the way, that's more than likely they went to Bethany every night to Lazarus' house. There's a good chance that they would have gone there, again looking for Peter and John. And the women ran quickly from that tomb and they were frightened but filled with great joy, and they rushed to give the disciples this angel's message that Jesus has risen. He's not dead. He is alive. Next one. And as they went, Jesus met them along their journey back to Peter and John and the other disciples, and they ran to him and they grasped at his feet and worshiped him. And Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go tell your brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there." Amen. Next one. And as we were on the way, some of the guards went into the city and told the leading priest what had happened. So, these events that have happened, that the women that came and the guards that saw that they saw Jesus had left the tomb, and the angel had also spoken to these women. These are the events that transpired, that the guards now had to go tell the priest about the events that have happened. Jesus is no longer in the tomb, that he is gone. Next one. And the meeting with the elders was called, and they decided to give the soldiers a large bribe. And they told the soldiers, "You must say that Jesus' disciples came during the night while we were sleeping, and they stole his body." Now, here's the thing. There is 20 soldiers. None of them, they were all sleeping, and they all snuck up on all 20 soldiers. And then there were 2 stones on the in front of the tomb, and somebody snuck up on them and moved the 2 stones out of the way and tiptoed out carrying Jesus' body, and none of the 20 soldiers saw it or heard it. Telling a lie to cover up your mistake means making another mistake. That's the problem we have here. Next one. You must say that Jesus' disciples came during the night while we were sleeping and stole his body. That's your story. Again, this is Sunday. This is story that you're trying to stick to. Unbelievable. Next one. And if the governor hears about it, we will stand up for you so you don't get in trouble. So the guards accepted a bribe from the Sanhedrin and said what they were told to say, and their story spread wide among the Jews, and they still tell the story until the writing of this letter. Again, this is Sunday. Our lesson is about the events that transpired on Sunday. Amen. So this is the resurrection of Jesus. For me, I said it's the most important event in human history. Jesus went to the cross at Calvary to become sin sacrifice for us, to restore our relationship back with Almighty God, to give access to not just God's chosen people, but the whosoever's. The Gentiles now have access to God. The temple veil was rent, and now we have access into the Holy of Holies, that we have access to the Father, and we don't have to go only through the priest. That Jesus proved that this was a memorial event, and that when he died, the darkness fell on the land, and earthquakes happened, and the tombs were open, and people were walking the streets. And now this tomb is open miraculously by an angel, and these soldiers will now tell a concocted story that makes no sense to the rest of the world. This is one of the most important events in human history, that Jesus, the Son of God, came to do the Father's will and completed the task, so we may have the right to everlasting life, that we may forever be with Him in glory with our Father, our Creator. Amen. And that is our story. That is the end of our lesson. Happy Resurrection Day. Again, this is my YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe button and the bell. Get these lessons automatically. Share my lessons. Remember that this is Resurrection Day, and as we take our time out for to block out and to sequester ourselves against the coronavirus, don't block out the people in our lives. Enjoy and share our lives with everybody along this way, and remember that Jesus is our Messiah. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is the very Word that was made flesh. He is the one who came, and Easter is about Jesus. And Jesus did this for you and me. Amen. Thanks so much for your time. Amen. Resurrection Sunday, events leading up to Easter. Amen. Thanks so much.